that progress, but I have mentioned in that memo that we are delaying the start of that cadet class until we can make sure that that curriculum is up to the standards that we all expect for our officers in the future. So with that, I'm going to ask ACM Ariano to highlight a little bit more on the cadet class and the progress that we're making on the training academy itself. ACM Ariano.
Thank you, City Manager. And just to check, make sure that I can be heard. Thank you. Chair Flanagan, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, it's a pleasure to be here to embark upon the work that we're going to be doing here for the city and the community with regards to reimagining how we might do public safety. And so here I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing with regard to the resolution from December having to do with the training academy. So you may recall that there are four main elements for this resolution. One is to conduct an investigation into the allegations of racist remarks, conduct an investigation evaluation into institutional racism, and then conduct APD training audit. With the other direction is to delay the cadet classes. And so I will focus now on the APD training audit and then cover the rest of the other portions of 066 after your executive session when we talk more broadly in resolution number 4, or item number 4. So in terms of the training audit, again, there are actually 4 segments or elements within that particular scope of work. It's to review the course material, review of the community engagement programming. We're identifying areas for improvement and additional resources for the training academy, and a review of the videos shown at the academy. In terms of the review of course material, the staff has gotten together to outline the revisions and corrections to course material and is anticipated to be completed this week. And so once those are completed, we'll begin the process of incorporating those recommendations so that it can be ready for the start of the next academy. In terms of review of the recommendations and the community engagement programming, this review was completed in the spring earlier this year, and the recommendations have been incorporated. Revisions to the programming include broadening the list of community organizations and groups to more appropriately reflect the community and placing more structure around the program and to make it more meaningful. One of the third item is to identify areas for improvement and additional resources for APD Training Academy. Some of those have already been incorporated or will be incorporated. And certainly once the consultant comes on board to do the larger scope of work, there may be other additional resources that will become available to be incorporated into the academy. A couple of examples here: inclusion of the history of police and race in America. Back in March, the Office of Police Oversight, Farrah Muscadin, the director, sent a memo to Chief Manley to formally recommend that this be incorporated. And so that is going to be done. You may know that with the Equity Office, we've started the process of using the Equity Assessment Tool. And so we are in the process of incorporating some of those elements too, recognizing that the police department organization is very large in terms of the divisions within there. And so they are going through a process of looking through and using the Equity Assessment Tool in a structured way. You may know that the APD's Training Academy leadership team has completed the Beyond Diversity training offered by Leadership Austin. And so APD staff is continuing to engage a group to strategically implement key components of the training curriculum into the Training Academy, as well as providing training to current officers in APD. So let me touch now on the last piece of the training audit, and that has to do with the video reviews. The last segment is to look at those reviews or videos with a lens to reducing racial disparities in the use of force and severity of force, reducing racial disparities in discretionary searches, and increasing de-escalation. And we have to be frank about this. This has been one of the most challenging pieces of the work before us. By way of background, the Equity Office helped with assembling a video review panel comprised of 11 members. 6 are from the community, a representative from the Office of Police Oversight, a representative from the Equity Office, an academic professional with expertise in racial justice and equity, a police lieutenant who oversees cadet training, and an APD training instructor. And so the panel was charged with selecting videos for accuracy, relevance, effectiveness, and cultural sensitivities, and then make recommendations. So the panel began meeting on May 15th. However, it became apparent that the timeline of the process was too quick, for, particularly in the feedback that we were receiving from the community members. And the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic really introduced an element that we hadn't anticipated as we tried to put this together. This oil boiled down into whether or not, from the community perspective, we could make or conduct a significant review and make meaningful changes and recommendations. And then finally, certainly, the tragic death of Mr. George Floyd in Minneapolis, as well as our own officer-involved shooting death of Mr. Michael Ramos, created a situation where we just needed to take a pause and reassess our approach. We are in the process of signing on a local facilitator with extensive experience in community engagement and a strong background in restorative justice and racial justice, who will bring new structure to the process. And we're lucky to be able to say that the facilitator will begin their work next week. That concludes my update for the Training Academy audit, and be happy to answer, I guess, pass it back to the chair for comments.
Well, if I might, we have two members of the community advisory team that have been reviewing. I'm going to bring both of you into the meeting as a panelist and give you all an opportunity to add any additional brief comments that you feel would be helpful at this time. I know it takes a second once I bring you in for the technology to catch up, but Angelica and Nakia. Nakia, I think your audio is on, so you can speak.
Great, thank you for inviting us to share with you our experience on the panel. So the number of videos that we're supposed to be watching is a lot. I think that we were supposed to be watching about 30 by now, and I believe that we've watched maybe 8. There's a lot of conversation to have around these videos, and a lot of context that I feel like we're missing for a lot. So for instance, the one on Monday, we watched 3 videos. They were very short, about 3 minutes apiece. And the first one had, it began at conflict and 2 people grappling. One was an officer, one was a black man. The officer is a young white woman. There was a gun. It was hers. She brought out the gun. She shot him twice. He took it and started shooting at her. And then, like, you see that it ends with her being fine. She didn't get hit, and him being in an ambulance. And that's the video. Like, that's the entire video. And so there's not a lot of, like, talking about what is the context that we're putting this in, what is the conversation that we're having around this. Is the conversation something along the lines of, see, these people are really dangerous and you've got to be on your guard all the time? Or is it, hey, this is one of the things that can happen when you don't de-escalate early enough, right? Like, we don't know what the conversation is around this piece of material to be able to evaluate it particularly well. And so I think that we need a lot more context, and honestly, I think that we need a lot more time to be able to view some of the videos. The other 2 videos that we saw on Monday both had, both ended with the civilian being shot. The first one, this man was shot in mid-body 10 times. The second one, the man was shot in mid-body twice, and the camera ended with him, like, on the ground, bleeding and not moving, and we don't know what happened at the end of that. So these aren't, like, light, fun, happy videos. Like, some of them are really traumatic, and so it's going to take us a longer time to be able to process them and to provide critique and feedback. I think that there's some patterns that we've seen with some of the videos that are a lot concerning. There's one, and I'm so sorry I don't have the specific details of which Supreme Court case it was, but it was supposed to be a role play for a particular Supreme Court case. And the video had become racialized. So I think initially in the Supreme Court case, it was two white men, and somebody, like, he got pulled over for a traffic stop. He had a gun in the car and was ordered to kidnap the car and was going to be arrested. And in the video that they provided, it was a black man that they were stopping. It was a white woman who was stopping him, and the reason that they were stopping, that they ordered him out of the car and to be detained, was because she was afraid for her life because it was dark and it was scary, and he had a weapon. From what I understand, that's not even illegal now. Like, this video was made so long ago that the laws in Texas have changed around, like, concealed carry, and, like, you can't just order somebody out of the car because it's dark at night and they have a gun, right? So, like, even the things that, like, the way it's being taught and being racialized is a problem, but also the things that are being taught in the video are outdated and frankly incorrect. And that's very, very concerning if this is a training video for Austin Police Department. A couple of other things, because I know that, like, you all have a really packed agenda and you wanted it to be quick. I very much think that we need a longer timeline and we need to see more of the videos. So the videos that we saw on Monday had this kind of preface that was saying that these aren't the de-escalation videos. This is, you know, what happens when somebody has taken your weapon. But we don't know if we're going to see the de-escalation videos that they're referring to, saying, oh, well, you know, these other videos are going to be able to provide you with that particular context. You know, that we have plans to see some, but we don't have plans to see all of them. So I think it would be really helpful if we could get kind of a list of, like, what are the videos that are out there, so that we can also be able to influence which ones we get to see and which ones we decide that we don't need to. Because I think that we're getting a really incomplete picture. So I think that that's most of it. Oh, the other thing was, in some of the videos where they're talking about legalese, they seem to be focusing a lot on the rights of the police officer and not at all the rights of the citizenry or the civilians. So it's kind of positioned in this way to figure out how you can get over or how you can cover your butt once you get to court, but not like, hey, these people have this right and so you're not able to do that, and your job is to protect those rights regarding on who's, like, regardless of who's infringing on them. So there's a lot of things that are really a lot more complicated, I think, than the original plan of, like, look at this video, see if it's okay. Because I know that the original video, the reason why we came on here is because there was a video that I saw in the training where there was a woman who was being talked down by an officer, and for 12 minutes out of this 15-minute video, which was in general a really good example of what to do, this woman was topless, and there were no like little rectangles, there was no blurring out anything. Like, this was just a topless woman having the worst day of her life, right, in her house. And like that there was a very clear, like, this thing was incorrect, put some rectangles over that, like, let's go, move on to the next video. And I think that these videos are a lot more complex and need to have more discussion around them.
Thank you, Nakia. Angelica, would you like to add anything to that? Let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Can you all hear me just fine?
Yes, you sound great.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak. I'm a part of the Community Review Board as well with Nakia, and agree with all that Nakia has said in regards to our experience thus far with this process. I'd like to request for Council and the Mayor to consider giving us more time to look at this audit. Right now, you know, we were supposed to watch 112 videos as a whole for all the content, and then 30 videos by this time. And so far, we've only watched like 8 videos. So it really shows that we need to have dialogue that goes beyond just surveys and minimal conversation. I'd also like to request that we expand the time to submit the survey. Currently, right now, we have 24 hours to submit our feedback based off the surveys, based off the videos. We would like to see if we can expand that time to allow for maybe one week, due to the fact that it takes people a little bit more time to digest the information, or maybe they want to think through. I'd also like to request for all the videos to be submitted to a drive. Currently, right now, we get access to the videos maybe 1 week before our meeting. Let's say we'll get access to it on a Friday, and then for the following Monday, we're watching the videos during the trainings. We would like to see all the videos ahead of time, having it in a file that we're able to go back to and identify repetitive patterns opposed to just one-offs. I would also like the opportunity to suggest new content. not just what's wrong with the video, but what could the video be replaced with, and allowing a space for that to be processed and received, opposed to just acknowledged. So currently right now we're looking at the videos. A lot of the information is outdated. It's also concerning that the information might actually be incorrect legally. So just allowing our group to say, maybe this could be replaced with XYZ, and having that be processed and received, not just acknowledged, like that's a great idea, but let's see if there's a way to actually implement this. I would like to encourage a focus group of former cadets that left to receive feedback through their exit interviews, to review information to identify if there's patterns, whether that be through our group or through an external group. I think it's really important to interview those cadets that left through their exit interviews, because when they leave, HR has them write down a document about why they decided to leave the academy. I think it's important for those documents to be reviewed from the exit interview to identify if there's repetitive patterns. And I think it's crucially important to see if there's a pattern here, mostly around, physical, if they say, they weren't physically fit, seeing if there were opportunities for hazing while people were in the training academy, or if there was mistreatment for gender inequality, which we've heard of. And then also identify if there's we've identified that there's a lot of racialized content from the narratives that we speak to. So what Nakia was saying, we're seeing a lot of these racialized content where specifically African Americans are being portrayed in a negative light. And we'd like a combination of seeing the curriculum through the video. So currently right now what's happening is we receive the video, we receive some briefing, sometimes we receive the curriculum or not. And what we're seeing that's happening in the class is they're saying, we're asking questions for a little bit more justification. And they're saying, well, we don't have the correct trainer to be able to explain what's happening during this curriculum, or we need to bring in the right people, or, we talk about it later down the line. It really is difficult for us to provide critical feedback if we don't have all the information to be able to provide this feedback from the video. So seeing the curriculum, a brief summary, whether it be through a PDF or through a short presentation, that way we're able to provide better information. I'd also like to request for a criminal attorney to also join these video classes, because I'm completely concerned that some of the legal jargon that's being utilized is outdated and incorrect. And the way that they're providing and justifying it to the cadets is, we explain it. The group really does not know what that looks like. So having a criminal attorney to also look at the videos to make sure that that information is correct, that really we're looking for patterns around racial injustice, it would be good to have a criminal attorney to look more onto the legal side of things. And like Nakia said, it's not focused on serving people like what we're seeing in this video. It's not really people trading the cadets. It's more about how to criminalize them and throw a book at them in case that there is a traffic stops. So there needs to be more content around serving the community, not just how to justify the excessive use of force. I'd also like to request for council consider a community report. So mandate a community report from the reviewers. There's a report that will be developed by Dr. Sarah Nueva and APD. We would like for the mayor to say, we would like to mandate a community report as well, so we can develop our report we're requesting. So that's a lot right there. I just want to share that information if there's any questions.
Thank you. That was a good list. Your audio is breaking up a little bit at the end, so you might be having some slight internet issues. But I want to assure both of you, one, thank you for joining the meeting today as invited testimony. I want to ensure you that this is not your only opportunity to tell us what you need. So there will be plenty of time. Please continue to work with my office and the committee members and the mayor and the council. There's a lot of lists of really good stuff. I want to give either Ray or Spencer a brief opportunity to comment, and then we'll take questions from the committee members first.
Sure, I'll start and then pass it over to ACM Mariano. First of all, I want to thank both of you for your service on this work, because it is not lost on me both the time commitment and your willingness to take this challenge on. We know that we have a lot of work to do, and that was one reason I delayed the original June class, and then now made that decision to further delay, because not only of the reasons that ACM Mariano mentioned, but I'd also heard this feedback from community as well. So I look forward to working with you and working with the new consultant that will be brought on board to address each of the concerns that you raised. ACM Mariano.
Thank you. And again, I would echo my appreciation and certainly personal recognition of some of the comments that you made. it is clear to me that we are going to want to take this feedback that you have and working with the facilitator, be able to structure a more comprehensive look at the Training Academy videos and the course materials generally. So we stand ready to meet with the panel again. We'll also take into consideration some of your recommendations with regard to additional members that might be included in the panel and see how we move forward with a timeline that will make better sense.
Thank you. We're making good time. I hope we can continue to make good time. Do any of the committee members have questions or comments at this time? Councilmember Harper Madison.
Again, I'll echo the sentiment of the chair and some of the other folks on the line in recognition of both Nakia and Angelica. Thank you for your time. I think we don't often enough take the opportunity to say these are volunteer roles. And we really appreciate you taking the time and the effort and putting forward, making space to do this work. So thank you again. There were a couple things that were said throughout the course of your presentation though. Something about the timeline. I just wonder if either of you have anything to contribute to the body about timeline suggestions. Just in your mind's eye, if you're saying you have to look at 130 videos and thus far you've had the opportunity to view 8, has the body taken the opportunity to sort of think through what would be a more reasonable timeline?
So Nakia, feel free to jump in, but for us currently right now, it's hard to dictate a timeline due to the fact that whenever we're reviewing these videos, some videos allow for larger discussions and some, it's just 30 minutes to an hour. But that's been the difficult thing here is putting a time to the videos, specifically because there's people on our call that have diverse perspectives. So for us, there's no way to dictate a time, and we'd like the flexibility of saying, due to the fact of all the content that we're reviewing, potentially extending the timeline in a way that makes more sense and that's feasible for us, but we're not able to dictate specifically how long each video can take. Nakia?
I would like to second what you said, and also some of the videos vary considerably in length. Like some of them are 3 minutes, some of them are 25 minutes, and the conversation that we have is also varies depending on those videos. So like we've had some of the longer conversations on the 3-minute videos, and so I think that it would be very difficult to dictate a timeline, especially since I think that it's appropriate for us to be able to figure out what are the other videos that we're missing and to include those in our work. And so I think until we're able to see like what are the videos that we can be looking at, it's going to be really difficult to assess that.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And I think, just moving forward, what we're all trying to do, right, is get to a place where we're coming up with solutions. And so in my mind's eye, if we could ask you all again, we keep asking clearly, if we could ask you again for one more thing, if you could give us a better idea of what an appropriate timeline would be for you to accomplish the task we put before you. We recognize the difficulty of it. We also recognize that we're asking a lot. And so thank you for stepping up. But on our end, both by way of the manager and this body, what we're going to have to do is be thinking through next steps. So in theory, there's supposed to be a class in October. So if we aren't going to have a July class, and you guys have watched 8 of over 100 videos in June, does that look like we also need to be having conversations about what happens with the October class? And I'd like very much to start having that conversation now and not surprise people and not put anybody in a position to where they just don't feel like they had enough in the way of runway. And so just if as a body, you all could start thinking through timeline, like what does that look like? And I don't know that I'm asking necessarily for you to have really, succinct data for like per video, it takes us this amount of time to process the information, et cetera, but if in the coming days and weeks, we could just get a better idea of what it is we're asking you for and what are the direct implications for what the next cadet class would look like. I think that's an important conversation for us to start having sooner than later. So I'm sorry to ask, but that's one more task. If y'all could just give us a better idea of what next steps look like there. There was another thing that occurred to me as y'all were having the conversation. Excuse me. And it got me thinking about capacity. This volunteer body that we're asking to do so much, from a capacity perspective, do you have enough? Are we supporting you enough? Do you have enough people? What more could we be doing to support the efforts that, were brought forward by way of the resolution that call for the creation of this body to do this audit and review? Do you have enough, and are we supporting you enough? And if not, what more do you need?
Angelica, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Angelica. And again, I want to remind folks, we're just real brief, and feel free to take questions as rhetorical and get them answered later.
Excellent. So thank you, Councilmember Natasha Harper-Madison. Our group will get together and identify a potential timeline, as well as discuss if there's anything in addition that we need. There's 4 additional team members that will compile some information and then provide information to the group. So Nakia, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that we're not technically volunteers. We are actually getting paid for some amount of the service, and I feel like that's really important. And thank you for arranging that. So I would say that once we have a better idea of what exactly our curriculum can be, looking at the context and looking at the number of videos that we have to be able to watch, I think it'll be a lot easier to be able to determine a timeline. So as soon as we have that information, we'll be able to start working on what a realistic timeline looks like.
Thank you both for that feedback, and thank you, Chair, for the time check reminder. And Nakia, I really appreciate you offering the clarity there about the payment, because I think that's of the utmost importance. So my apologies for messing that up. And again, thank you both for your time today, and just in general.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we have sufficient time for the budget conversation, which is our next. Do the committee members or any council members want to jump in quickly? Councilmember Tovo.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to add my thanks to the panelists for that really useful feedback, and for all of your work, your long work and your hard work. I wanted to ask Assistant City Manager Ariano, I think this question would be directed at you. The panelists requested more contextual information with regard to the curriculum and the manner in which it's presented. Is that something that you can accomplish pretty quickly? Because it seems like having those professional staff available to the committee, to the Community Advisory Board, as well as those additional materials, are really going to help facilitate their work.
And so what I would say is the work that our facilitator is going to start with the panel is to get all of this information, which hopefully it sounds like you've been toting down, and certainly appreciate that. And really try to restructure the entire way we approach the video reviews. The information that our panelists have been providing us is certainly very important, and we want this to be a meaningful, comprehensive way so that the community can feel comfortable, and by extension, certainly council members can feel comfortable that we're doing a good job making sure that the training materials that we provide to our new cadets matches our expectation.
So is that something you believe can be accomplished immediately?
Well, we start that process of the discussion and see how it might be structured as early as tomorrow, next week, in their next meeting.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kassar, did your hand go up?
Yeah, I had 2 questions. One was primarily to Councilmember Tovo's question. I would really like clarity or report back on which parts of the curriculum, if any, there isn't community input on, because it sounds to me like the curriculum wraps around these videos, and that we should be an open book, and that all of this should be available to the group, so that they aren't giving input on some stuff over here without the context of the rest. So if the decision is anything other than we're an open book and any of the curriculum is open for community input, that's, I think, my preference, and I think the panelists here is what I'm taking from them. And if the decision is anything other than that, it would be good to hear. Just and then separately, to the point about reports from the community panel, I think that would be useful and interesting for y'all to put together for us. Manager, from the resolution we passed last week, we unanimously passed that it'd be important for council to vote to say, let's start the cadet class back up. And so I think having a report about what the community members think before we take that vote would be really useful. So I don't think that's even a new charge we have to give you. I think it makes good sense that if we're going to take that vote, we would want, you know, y'all to have written something up for us and to hear your thoughts.
Councilmember Alter, did your hand go up?
Yes, I'll try to be really quick. I wanted to ask a question about the new materials and particularly the class that's been developed about race in the history of policing, which I understand is a very powerful curriculum. So I have two questions here. One is, will we be able to deliver that course with a faculty member that's sort of not part of the academy so that it can be taught at the level it needs to be taught? And secondly, can we think about engaging other members of the police department with that course once it's developed and been delivered to an academy?
So I'm seeing here a response that yes, the history of racism course will be taught by an outside person. And then as to your second question, I wasn't quite clear on what that question was.
So, you know, the cadet class is one element of training, but that is a course that by virtue of it not having been part of the academy, is a course that other officers might benefit from. And so, I mean, this is true perhaps with a lot of the things that are in the cadet academy, that as we change them and we find that particular pieces may be powerful, finding ways to engage existing officers with that training. And I was particularly interested in this course on the history of policing and racism.
So I'm getting the signal here that yes, this course will also be rolled into training for active officers.
Okay, thank you. And then one just last thing for the panel, when you do provide the sense of the timeline, if you can give a fuller picture, if there's any way to roll out the class, like let them begin and finish some of the work after they've started, or if it's all a piece and integrated, that's not possible. I'm just curious if there's any flexibility in that, and you have a better sense of the review process.
Councilmember Kitchen.
Just quickly, and this can be handled offline, I just wanted to flag the potential to, over time, to work with ACC on revamping their training, or not training, their coursework that they do there, that many people participate in before they come into training. So the recommendations that are coming out of this, I think, will be, I can already hear that they're going to be very, very useful, very informative, and very transformative. And would just like to suggest that at some point in the process, there be some collaboration or work done with ACC to improve the curriculum that they have.
We can certainly establish that point of contact and provide information back to ACC.
Okay, I'll share I've had some conversation with one of the ACC board members, and I'll share that connection.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thanks. Let's move on to the next item. I'll just say that I'm also interested in looking at CapCog's training academy to see if there's maybe parts or parcels that we might find cost savings or more efficiencies by doing work through the CapCog process. I think it's another good option to look at. Thank you, Angelica and Nakia, for your participation in our committee meeting today.